John and I talk about how the University of Michigan is playing hide the grades on this week's podcast.
Bold,
blind,
and bonus.
Timmy C, happy Sunday to you, pal. How are you, my blind friend?
I'm good. Good. It's a nice Sunday in the upper Midwest. Yeah.
Now, do you want to tell the dozens and dozens of people that are regular listeners what we did this week? We met with an attorney to finalize our incorporation, right? And secondarily, we're going to do some marketing, right, Timmy?
Yeah, some social media. We're going to get out in the social.
Actually, it's hysterical because you and I are both. I mean, I have Instagram for my Westchester Nuts and Treats while my kids set me up with that, but I find myself getting sucked into that continuous reel. But now we have TikTok. What else do we have? We have Facebook. We have Instagram.
Yep. Connected
and you
have
YouTube. You have control of half, and I have control of something as well, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we're officially becoming like an important part of the social fabric.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, this is just the train is rolling. Get on, folks.
It is. We're building momentum. We had some good a lot of listens on YouTube. Welcome from YouTube. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, we did?
Remember to like, subscribe. Yeah. Yep.
Good. About last week's episode?
Last week's episode, yeah. I think we were angry and feisty enough, John. That's the key for YouTube.
Yeah, but I think the thing that episode, I listened to it, and as I say to you, I don't listen to every episode because most people don't like themselves in their pictures, and they don't like the sound of their voice, and that's true for me as well. Plus, I realize how much I talk when I listen as opposed to listen, and it drives me nuts. It does. But I did listen last week, and I think that episode more than anything kind of captured the essence of our show, which is you and I see a lot of the world the same way, and yet we both share mutual frustrations. But at the same token, we came across why the Democrats, why the Republicans, and so forth are having difficulty from different angles. I mean, you brought faith into it, theology, and jealousy, and so forth. Yeah. So I just, not to like toot our own horn, but why not? Let's toot our own horn.
But man, we're good. We're good, John.
And handsome. And let's tell everybody about your haircut, by the way.
Oh yeah.
I got on with Timmy, and those who don't know Timmy, he's always been thin, and he has his 1994 haircut right now, probably with about 1/3 the amount of hair loss.
Yeah.
But you went from having the Handy Kaufman and the 1.21 gigawatts, Dr. Brown, to now you look like you're back in 1994.
There we go.
Cute though.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you.
Anything new this week?
Oh, well, so I thought my laptop died, but check this out. I made an appointment to go to a local store. It's called U-Break iFix in West Madison.
Oh yeah, we have one of those.
Yeah. And they took it back and it wasn't charging. And they said, well, I plugged it in, the light goes on, and I put it on the voltmeter. It looks like it's working. And I was like, do I owe you? Because, it's their $60 diagnostic fee. And they're like, no, that's okay. I said, well, how can I help? And they're like, put in a good Google review. And I was like, I'll just mention it on the podcast. So if you're in Madison, good place. They didn't charge me when they could have, and they seem like helpful folks.
Now, let me ask you something. I don't mean to embarrass you, but do you notice that happens to you more often than not because of the fact that you're blind? And I'm sure you were with Hootie when you brought it in.
I was,
There's a great line. I just happen to remember this. It's a very, very heavy movie called Dead Man Walking. It's based on a true story of Sister Helen Prejean, and she counsels death row inmates in Louisiana. And she gets pulled over, and the police officer says, "You're a nun?" And she says, "Yeah." And he says, "I pulled over an IRS agent last year. I got audited this year. I don't want to know what happens if I give you a ticket." So it's kind of like that with you. Like, I wonder if people are like, "I'm not charging this guy. I don't want to go to hell,"
Yeah, I don't know. I was like, how can I repay you, or whatever. So I think it was a very good. So U-Break iFix in Madison. I was impressed.
I like that. And on top of which, I have a friend of mine who does medical stuff, and everything is tip based now, which I'm okay with. But I kind of get annoyed with somebody handing me a cup of coffee and they expect like a $2 tip, and I'm not cheap, as you know, Timmy. But this was one of those dicey scenarios. Do you tip them? Do you not? And so I just asked her, because she's a close friend of mine. She said, absolutely not. And she put like 17 exclamation points. And she said, the single best thing you can do here's a link to my Google review. Have your wife review me.
Yep.
And I was like, okay, I'll do that. Yeah. So, well, Timmy, let me give the answer to last week's trivia question.
I think we actually have this one. That my team of family, we figured it out.
All right, well, let me tell the story first. One of our regular listeners, Ben, reached out and said, I think you're wrong. I think there's 3 presidents, because he had thought Josh Johnson was a starting quarterback, and that is incorrect. Had Josh Johnson, or if Josh Johnson becomes a starting quarterback, because injuries happen with
Mm-hmm.
frequency in the NFL, then the dynamic changes. But as of today, August 23rd, no, there's one starting quarterback in the NFL that has the last name of a U.S. president. Who is it?
It's Lamar Jackson.
Yes. Nice
Yeah.
work, Timmy. Nice work. Lamar Jackson, Andrew Jackson, the president.
Yep.
And this week's line, quick trivia question, is in keeping with that line, which is the NFL. And, I was watching the Giants play preseason yesterday, and it's preseason, right? I
Yep.
remind people that Steve Spurrier, when he was at the time, Washington Redskins, or now the Washington Commanders, when he was their head coach for 2 years, he went undefeated in the preseason.
Yeah.
But he made it 2 years in the regular season. He got fired, right?
Yeah.
Why do I bring that up? Because preseason doesn't mean much. It's an opportunity for the guys to make the team and to show that their special teams wares and so forth and so on. But I saw the Giants playing the Dolphins, and I almost couldn't contain myself. I love baseball. Baseball is my favorite sport, but having football back is phenomenal. So,
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just excited, Timmy, that football's back, and I'm most excited about Notre Dame, obviously. And we're entering my favorite stretch of the year, which is September, October, November, because you have playoff baseball, you have football in full swing, the holidays start. It's a phenomenal time of the year.
Yeah. Notre Dame's playing in Lambeau Field. I think it's their first game. Yeah.
You've been up there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Coldest game of
Actually,
my life.
we're playing your alma mater. Who are you rooting for?
Oh, come on.
Medical school alma mater. I figured as much.
Come on, John.
Touche. Yeah. So this week's trivia question is actually quite interesting, and it's not a trick. It's not like a sports writer. It's not like an announcer. It's actually a football player. This guy played a significant position and is very well known. And there is one player in the NFL Football Hall of Fame, the NFL Football Hall of Fame, who never actually played a down of college football. He played a different sport in college, and he is now an NFL Hall of Famer.
Ooh, I have a guess.
One player. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just heard that this week, and I thought, ooh, that's a good one. And it kind of gets us ready for the season, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So, but anyway, Timmy, what are we talking about this week? Why don't you let the folks have a little preview?
Yeah. So you sent me this article, and I've been following it too. The University of Michigan, one of the largest public universities, and very highly ranked, has decided for the students in its arts and sciences college, which is not the whole university, the first semester of freshman year will essentially be pass-fail. They will keep track of grades apparently somehow internally for things like scholarships, but it won't appear on the transcript. And this is because of a mental health crisis in young people, John. A couple other interesting notes, because they're worried the kids will get intimidated. They're working on renaming the Great Lakes the Pretty Good Lakes.
Okay, I'm ready.
And also, I found this interesting article. Apparently, in 2022, do you want to guess how many % of undergraduate grades at University of Michigan were some kind of A?
Yeah, that's an undeniable reality since we graduated. I think it really started.
Actually, it's not an undeniable reality. It's unreality.
Okay, fair enough. Touche. That is an undeniable fact that grade inflation is a big problem. And I would dare say it's at least half of the students had an A. I know at Harvard it's even higher than that. Am I right?
74% of all undergraduate grades in that year were some kind of A.
Yeah, and you got all A's when it really mattered, and you got one A minus. Now, not to kick you while you're down, but I do want to remind people that Peter got an A in Spanish and you got an A minus.
It's true.
So yeah, it's true. That was your one A minus in college.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's just, it's not possible. I'm a big believer in the old adage that I'm a big believer in an aristocracy of achievement based on a democracy of opportunity. Meaning I want everyone to have equal opportunity. I don't want the same outcomes, though. And I think that this is part and parcel of that idea. But part of the reason they did it, as you say, is the mental health crisis. How do you feel about that as a psychiatrist? Because you actually were on the university setting. I mean, you were dealing in the VA and so forth. But is the mental health crisis as pronounced as people are putting out there?
I have a big take on this. But in order to answer my question, I have a clip for you I would like you to reflect on. Is that fair?
Of course.
So first of all, let me assert my firm belief that the only thing we have to fear is fear itself, nameless, unreasoning, unjustified terror, which paralyzes needed effort to convert retreat into advance.
What does that mean to you, John?
Well, it means I think you've lost your mind, because I will remind you that Franklin Delano Roosevelt was a Democrat who basically did everything that Reagan tried to undo.
Yeah, well, he's the progressive of progressives. So I'm
He
going
is.
I'm
He
going to
is.
the
He is the
source.
gold standard. Yeah.
But
All right. Fair
but
enough.
what is he saying?
I think that you can't allow yourself to give into fear, because it's a self-perpetuating reality. Am I wrong?
Well, I think so, and I think he's saying if the only thing we have to fear is fear, we're going to be okay because there's no real concrete danger.
Okay. Fair
Okay.
enough. All right. Following you so far.
So if you take that premise, what University of Michigan is doing is all.
And by the way, let's preface this by saying this is not unique to the University of Michigan. You and I are enjoying it thoroughly, kicking Michigan while they're down. But I will remind you that our attorney, who's now representing the Bald Blinded Bodies podcast, is a proud University of Michigan graduate.
Yeah.
So we should tread carefully. And if any of my kids went to Michigan, I'd be completely happy. But anyway, continue.
Yeah. So what they're doing is all, I think, out of fear, right? It's fear that they will lose those lucrative checks, that they will lose ranking. It's the students' fear of looking into their own academic mirror and realizing they don't measure up. It's the schools afraid of telling kids they're not very good at things. It's all these things, and this is all just fear.
Yeah, but there's a basis in that. I mean, obviously, part of the reason that alumni, their children go to the same school is they're fearful of losing those checks. They estimate that 20 to 25% of the incoming freshmen at Notre Dame are legacy, meaning children of alumni. Now, there are two ways to look at that. People who went to Notre Dame have children that tend to be smart. I get that. They probably are pushed towards Notre Dame, as it were. But it also, let's be honest, I mean, it's about fundraising. And that my frustration with this reality is the following. I'll give you my three things, and then I want to go back to the original question, which is, what do you see about the mental health crisis? Number one, I find this to be indicative of the larger paradigm that the universities have lost the forest for the trees. They used to be hotbeds of challenging ideas, orthodoxy, looking at things in a new way. And now it appears that universities, in a lot of ways, have become sort of fundraisers, right? I mean, just the money machines, as it were. And I think that they're treating students as though they're clients, and they want to make sure their clients are happy. It's almost a retail setting where the customer is always right.
It is a retail setting.
Yeah, but it wasn't always that way, and that's what frustrates me. That's number one. Number two, I think the mental health crisis amongst young people can be addressed in other ways, which is, how about getting off of social media, which we just talked about how we're joining, which you can't put a bow on irony like that. But, I mean, you've seen this, right? That kids spending all their times on screen time and on TikTok and on comparison and so forth. Didn't you tell me one time that envy is the death of happiness or something like that?
Yeah.
Yeah. And, maybe the mental health crisis isn't because they have grades and they're being told, hey, you're not an A student in mathematics. That's okay, right? Mm-hmm. You can be a B student in mathematics and still be a highly successful individual. That's number two, is I think that maybe the mental health crisis can be addressed other ways, like that, social media. And thirdly, as someone who actually has mental illness, and I don't really like to put a mirror on myself and talk about this, but I'm just going to say it because I'm done. Just like you have frustration with people taking a peacock as an emotional support animal, I come from a long line of Irish Catholic lunatics. I mean, you combine alcoholism with OCD, which used to stand for the Old Catholic disorder. I am a smorgasbord of all of it, right? Mm-hmm. I know what mental health is, mental illness is. I will go to bat for people, but not everybody who's having a bad day or who is nervous about this or that or blah, 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 has mental illness. My psychiatrist, who I used to see, used to get frustrated with people claiming PTSD. PTSD is people in warfare. It's not somebody who read a book that unsettled them, right? It's just, I think those three things. Number one, universities have lost their way. Number two, I think that students and their mental health crisis can be addressed. Go outside, get off of social media. And thirdly, not everyone who's having a bad day has mental illness. It cheapens the experience for people who actually have it. Full stop. I'm done. I have my soapbox. Now you get the soapbox.
Okay. Oh, I got a soapbox here.
Have at it. I love when you get going.
So first of all, on your first point, I totally agree. It's kind of like when the corporation shifted to the notion of maximizing shareholder value as the only value. I think it's the same thing with the university, that the bottom line is the bottom line.
That's a very liberal notion that you just highlighted, because shareholder value was all out of the Reagan 80s. I mean, Timmy, this is first you have FDR, and now you're going after your hero, Reagan. This is good
Well,
stuff.
I know the liberals would criticize the shareholder value notion themselves. So when applied to themselves, it might make sense for them to stop and think, right? Which
Fair enough.
is a lot
Touche.
to ask, admittedly.
Okay.
John, this mental health crisis, let me just say this. When I worked at the University of Wisconsin, the person who was ultimately in charge of our student health facility was a career administrative parasite at the universities who had a master's in library studies was their qualifying degree to run a health facility.
Yeah.
Right. So these are the people who are saying the mental health is out of whack. You know, they're a little short in the old knowledge base. So let me just say that. But the triumph of humanity was the development of the prefrontal cortex. So you picture the human brain is a lot like a dog brain with a little calculator on top. And that calculator is our prefrontal cortex. And you know what that does? That lets us subordinate our feelings to our will, to suppress our impulses, to work cooperatively. And that's what makes us human at the best of humanity. And when you turn around and say, because I'm feeling this way, we're going to lower your standards, you're undoing thousands, if not millions of years of development. And it is an incredible step backwards. And we're sitting here watching the fall while everybody's trying to convince these kids they're doing okay. They are not. And mental health is no excuse for lowering standards and no excuse for not teaching people what they need. I'm gonna give people a tip here. You ready? The world does not care about your feelings. I got an algorithm here. If you feel unsafe, check this out. Ask yourself, am I really physically in danger? If you're not sure, ask somebody over 50, am I physically in danger? If the answer is no, deal with it. There you go.
Okay. You know, not that I would ever use Donald J. Trump as the standard bearer for anything except for what I don't want my children to become. The Onion actually ran a headline after he won in 2016 and said, "Study confirms it's still nowhere near okay to behave like Donald Trump."
Yeah.
Yeah. But he did have a campaign slogan, or someone on his staff did, and I saw it in my neighborhood because, you know, I live in Pennsylvania, it's a swing state, and you live in Wisconsin, swing state. So I tried to avoid having conversations one way or the other because there's just no really upside, right?
Yeah.
But they had a sign that said, "Fuck your feelings, Donald J. Trump 2016." And there was an element in me that recognized, yeah, part of the reason I think he's become president is because of this. Everybody has to feel you can't do anything right, you can't do anything wrong anymore. Everybody's the same, and blah blah blah. And I just, you know, it's kind of like the DE&I space. I'm all for promoting people like yourself that have legitimate disabilities. I'm all for representation of minorities and positions and women. I have two daughters. But I think sometimes when people begin to force that or institutionalize that, I think it backfires, and universities are at the forefront of that. That's firstly and foremost. But secondly, what do you mean by danger? Do you differentiate, or are you being offended? Because to me, everyone who has PTSD, it's somebody said something mean to me. No, there's a foundational difference between being physically in danger and having your feelings hurt, right?
Yeah, and I think that's what this comes to. You'll see this all the time. People say, I feel unsafe. I feel unsafe with that comment. And it's like, okay, you may have that feeling. Let's examine why you do and see if it's accurate, right? Because if it's inaccurate, then it would be helpful if you recalibrated to let you function in the world.
But universities used to be at the forefront of doing that, and now they're enabling this behavior.
Yeah.
That's what's so frustrating. I mean,
it used to be where you would go to have your ideas confronted and challenged.
Correct.
Yeah.
It's a safe space where you're not going to have that likely in the corporate environment. If you want to examine why do you believe what you believe, or how do you believe what you believe, or how do you want to, you know, I grew up being raised Catholic. I went to, 12 years of Catholic school. I got to college, and for the first time in my life, I was able to see it from my own perspective. And, it changed for better or for worse, right? I think that's what college should be doing. But it seems to me now just a business that all it wants to do is make sure, and I'm not going to tell the story of what happened to you, but what happened to you at the University of Wisconsin is, the quintessential essence of everybody's feelings matter, and you can't do this. I think universities have lost their way. That's probably the most frustrating part. But going back to my initial question, is mental health as because like you were talking about transgenderism, and you've always said, look, it's out there. there's a handful of edge cases. How pronounced is mental health? I mean, how is it determined? Is it a 0 to 100 scale? Is it, like I can look at you and know that you have a physical disability. You're blind, right?
Yeah.
That's very easy for me to understand. But how do you determine how mentally ill someone is?
Yeah, well, so I spent about 5 years working in university health with these kinds of kids, and they ranged the gamut. There were hardworking people who were just struggling. There were people who didn't, who would spend 8 hours on screens and then wonder why they're having trouble in class. Or people,
Right. That's what I was talking about
yeah,
earlier. The mental health crisis can be explained by the goddamn cell phones, and I'm as guilty of it as the next person,
yeah.
which drives me nuts.
And some of the folks were really ill. I had a colleague who said, we're kind of running a mental health hospital, and the kids just go to school. Like there's some really, really seriously ill kids too. And the other part of this is not everybody's right for college, and not everybody's right for college right now. And so if these kids are struggling, maybe it would behoove them to go do something else for a little while. So like there really are kids who are struggling, but there's a good chunk who are anxious because their world revolves around Instagram
Status
and
and
yeah,
Instagram and
how
making sure
they
that
look. And we know that 1 out of 3 girls on Instagram feel worse about themselves, so they're coming into college like
is
that.
that a statistical fact?
Yeah,
One out of
yeah, it
three.
was by one of the whistleblowers. I'm blanking on her name.
So, in terms of the mental health crisis, though, has it become worse with the advent of technology? Or what I'm getting at is, they used to say about homosexual men that he was the lifelong bachelor, a confirmed
Yes.
bachelor, right, right, right.
Yep.
Like denial is not just a river in Egypt,
Hmm.
right? My grandmother, God rest her soul, my aunt died a few years back. She was, my Aunt Mary's on her way over with her friend, her friend who's living with her the last 20 years, you know?
Yeah.
And so my question is, I tend to believe that throughout humanity, the same percentage of people have always been gay or have always been left-handed or have always been this. Is it probably the same as it relates to mental health from your perspective, or is it sort of a sliding scale? Has it become more pronounced? You understand what I
I think
mean?
it's gotten a lot worse. I do. Jonathan Haidt's anxious generation. He talks about the cell phone and the social
Oh, the
media.
social psychologist at NYU.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah.
We've invited him on, by the way. If he happens to be a listener.
The lack of a child, a free play childhood. Like it's worse. It is definitely worse now.
And the helicopter parents, right? They're contributing to it.
Not just
I mean,
helicopter parents, snowplow parents who actually smooth out the way for their kids. Yeah.
I had read something that a significant percentage, it was double digits of people bring their parents on their interviews.
Yes.
Like, you can't, this is life, real life is stranger than fiction. But I mean, Jonathan Haidt has also talked about simple things like people got involved, and for better or for worse, I understand how it happened. It's not just, you can't just point, it's like healthcare. You can't just point your finger at one thing and say, this is the reason healthcare costs are through the roof, right?
Yeah.
It's the same thing with the mental health crisis, with our children being sort of babied until they're teenagers and blah, 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 and so forth. Jonathan Haidt talked about it in the simple example of playgrounds. You used to make playgrounds that had metal slides and kids would fall down and get hurt. And there is a value in getting hurt because by virtue of getting hurt, you learn to not get hurt, right? I mean, how do you stop touching a hot stove? Touch it, you learn,
Well,
right?
the other part of this, I think, that you're hitting on is there's this thing called stress inoculation, where you overcome a small challenge and you realize you can do it, and then you overcome a bigger one. And if we're continuing to not challenge our children in the academic space, and now extending that into college,
Participation trophies.
yeah, they're never going to
Yeah.
learn.
So you're telling me that there is a value. I don't know how to explain it. It's sort of like somebody said, "How do you know you love your wife?" And it's just, "I do." And they said, "Well, prove it," right? I don't know how to prove that having grades or having differentiation is good. How do we go about proving that having an A and a C and a D student is okay?
Well, I think first of all, when you come up with a new plan, you should that fundamentally alters things. You should have a good reason for it, and you shouldn't presume it's a good idea. So we've been using letter grades and sorting for quite some time, and it seemed pretty effective. It got people on the moon, etc. Right? Throwing it out now just because of feelings is not necessarily a good idea. I have a way to put this into perspective. I have a little clip. You ready for this, John?
I am.
Okay, check this out. Here's a newsreel I came across.
June 1944. Young men fresh from their farms, high schools, and cities storm the beaches of Normandy. They push on to beat back the Nazi menace. They will succeed. 82 years later, their great-grandchildren storm the campuses of American universities. But now they are faced by a more implacable foe, their own feelings. While their ancestors pressed on under enemy fire, today's students cower before a C or a failing grade.
You're not going to hear me disagree. Katie and I watched Saving Private Ryan. She was like, it's like my studying in college, graduate school was history, political science, and so forth. And I remember watching Saving Private Ryan. Like, unbelievable movie. I was like, I know, but I've been reading about this for my entire life. I don't need to see this. I mean,
Mhm.
that is incredible. Like, I've said this before. If today's generation was asked to storm the beaches of Normandy, we'd all be speaking German, right? I mean,
Yeah.
let me give you an example. Let me give you two examples. One that I think facilitates the point that grades don't matter, and the other one that kind of does. And one of the things I always talk about is Kennedy, and he brought in the best and the brightest, and that best and the brightest, the smartest people in the world, they got us into Vietnam, right?
Yeah.
And the other one that I always heard in academia, and a friend of mine who's a teacher uses this all the time, which is you should always be nice to your A students because if you're lucky, someday they'll come back and they'll teach at the school for you.
Hmm.
But be really nice to your C and D students because they're the ones who will come back and endow a building for you.
Hmm.
It's like, yeah, there is an element of I have friends of mine that school was never for them, and they make a whole lot more money than me.
Yeah.
And not that money's the measure. You understand what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Yeah.
But the
Yeah.
measure of success can be ascertained in a number of different ways, and I just think that having grades is a snapshot in time of how you did at that time in mathematics, philosophy, English, whatever it may be. It's not a value judgment on your life, right? And I
Yeah.
think that's where people are mixing these two. So I, I I think at the top, I really blame the universities for enabling this behavior because they just want to make sure the donors are happy, the endowment gets bigger, nobody gets offended, everybody's fine, blah, blah, blah. But you've lost the purpose of what a university is by behaving that way. And secondarily, I think it's as simple as telling these students, hey, do me a favor, give me your phone for a week, go for a walk, you know,
Yeah.
stop watching television, stop being in front of a computer. I do. I think there is an element, a simple deduction. I don't think removing grades is the answer, but I understand how we've got to that point.
Well,
And to their credit, a number of major, critics, social critics, whether it be Bill Maher or George Will in the Washington Post, they've really had a field day with this.
yeah.
Like, are you out of your mind? And George Will wrote an article in which he compared, let's assume the University of Michigan football team, which won a national title 2 years ago. Let's be honest, under questionable circumstances, they might Connor Stallions may have been taping signs, and sure enough, Jim Harbaugh leaves the next year. But my point being is even if Ted won the national title, that is one of the stalwarts of college football.
Hmm.
If the college football team was being treated or behaving the same way that the students in freshman year humanities were, we would get nowhere, right?
Yeah.
That's part of the thing I love about sports. You know who won, you know who lost, right? I'm
Yeah.
not. It doesn't mean that you're a loser. You lost that game, though. You got to be. It doesn't mean you're a horrible human being. You got to be in mathematics.
Well, there's at least two other things. The K-12 education system is letting these kids down ahead of time. So we already talked about how the ACT and those are standardized tests are getting easier. We did a thing on how UCSD, University of California, San Diego, found their kids can't do math when they come in. So I think probably part of this is to give these kids a semester to try to catch up and come up to college speed because they know they're not ready. Like, I think that may be part of it too. And you can sort of see that.
That's the best spin on it, Timmy. That's the best spin I've heard, because if that's what your argument is for doing this, then we are in a really tough spot.
We are. We're all
right?
we're in denial about our kids are doing and how poorly they're going to do. And I mean, we haven't even talked about how they can use AI instead of think. Like, this is trouble. And not that Michigan is unique.
No, and I want to reiterate that this is not, but Michigan is just sort of the symbol of everything. It's like Walmart; they're the big corporate, big evil corporation. But you're leaving out, Costco. You're leaving out Target. You're leaving out all the other ones. Actually, Costco, I will go to bat for. He's a very, very good corporation.
Yeah.
But you understand what I'm saying, which is Michigan has just sort of become the lodestar for this type of behavior.
Well, it's interesting. Harvard has recently gone the other way to try to cut down on grade inflation. So
yes,
there are some opposing forces, but like I say, Michigan is not alone.
No, and I think the pendulum is going to continue to swing in Michigan's direction until we reach a boiling point at which it'll begin to swim back towards what Harvard has embraced, right? Which is, look, people, we're not saying, but it's sort of like, look, you got into Harvard. That by itself means you're an exceptional human being in terms of your abilities, or your high school career reflects that, and so forth. now you're amongst other exceptional human beings. It's sort of like, I understand why Tom Brady makes more money than other people do because of his talent. I mean, again, it's an aristocracy of achievement based on a democracy of opportunity. And by doing away with grades, I think you're enabling it's basically participation trophies for adults. It drives me nuts.
Yeah.
And we could spend an entire podcast going after the university setting. I find it appalling, their behavior, and they're enabling this behavior. And, and again, this groupthink. And the irony, of course, is, that universities usually hire academics as presidents. And so that's just a self perpetuating paradigm. I'm reminded of the movie As Good as It Gets, with Jack Nicholson and Helen Hunt. Do you remember that from about 30 years ago?
Yeah.
It's one of the few movies that won Best Actor, Best Picture, Best Director, so forth and so on. And there's this crazy woman who comes up and talks to Jack Nicholson. And he's this sort of bitter, angry, misplaced sort of romance writer. And she says, "How do you know how to write women so well?" And he says, "I think of a man and I take away reason and accountability." And I tried to explain that to people about the university settings. If you have a corporation, and again, I understand the downsides of corporation. You talked about maximizing shareholder value, and there are things, but the American economy continues to truck on. I mean, we are the largest economy in the world. If you invested in the Fortune 500 25 years ago, you are doing quite well. My point being is if you want to understand academia, think of an American corporation and take away reason and accountability, and then you have academia.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean,
well,
right?
and insert philosophies and ideologies that do not connect to the real world and give people things to do. Right.
Real quick before we get into our hero and whack job, do you have a solution for this from your perspective? Because you're uniquely positioned, Timmy. You're both a psychiatrist who has dealt with the mental health crisis. You worked in the university setting. You have a disability. I mean, if there's anybody who has the ability or should, be listened to, it would be Timmy Cordes. What do you say? Is there a grand idea you have?
So, well, there are people, one of whom is Peter Boghossian, who's a former professor, and his solution, he says, burn it down. The academia cannot stand its, has credibility problems, all these things. And I don't want to believe that. I guess what I would do is I would take all the university.
That was the idea behind Vietnam. I mean,
yeah.
We have to destroy it in order to save it. I refuse to believe that. I mean, that's the entire basis of the Batman series, that Gotham can be saved. I think it's there too long. I understand the notion though, but go ahead. I'm sorry.
So here's what I would do. I would take the entire faculty of the university, put them in the football stadium, and have them sit down and say, look to your left, look to your right. One of you won't be here in 6 months. Prove to me you should be. And just cut the whatever studies department, cut, and then maybe the thing will be leaner, meaner, won't have to charge as much admission, and go from there.
Yeah, I can't say you're wrong, but I mean, the opposite is what's been happening. I mean, when we were in school, and this is only 32 years ago when we were freshmen, it was this week 32 years ago.
Yeah.
I think the number of administrators was something like 3 to 1 or something for every student. And now it's like double digits, Timmy. I mean,
yeah.
It's guaranteed. And again, universities and academia in general, it's pretty good work if you can get it, because it has a guaranteed revenue stream, meaning, people still buy into this notion that I have to send my kids to college. And to your point, not everybody's meant to go to college. Not everybody's meant to go to a 4-year college. Hey, maybe you're not meant to go to Harvard, right?
Well, here's the other. You just said something very fascinating to me. I'm considering this a paradox. The 4-year college. Imagine if you headed out in your car. You're in Philly, John, and you're like, "Well, I want to go to Tallahassee. I want to go to New York. I want to go to Boston." And somehow they all manage to take 4 hours to get there. Like, every degree somehow takes 4 years, and each and learning each individual skill to be an accountant versus a biochemist versus a whatever studies major somehow happens to take 4 years of 4 annual giant checks or biannual, right? If you actually calibrated the duration of the educational experience to what you're actually supposed to learn, like, just imagine that. It's just so absurd that everything takes 4 years.
Right. No, there's an element of that. Yeah. And I mean, Peter Thiel and some others have talked about this, which the university system, I think what's ultimate, but I've been saying this for 20 years, Timmy, that the pricing and the inflation and so forth cannot continue on this trajectory. And it is resilient. It has proven me wrong. And I think ultimately what's going to happen is there's going to be a handful of even universities, of note that will survive. I think state universities are completely underrated, if that's possible, by the way, because they're fascinating studies in how government and their citizens should interact and so forth. But I think there's going to be a handful of universities of note that are going to survive this crisis. But I think a lot of universities, to your point, look to your left, look to your right. Half of them are going to probably be gone by the time you and
Yeah.
I are,
Well,
100 years old.
demographically, there's less. This is the largest class that's going to be in a very long time for universities, and they're going to have to figure out what to do. So, Yep.
Anyway, all right. Well, Timmy, why don't you give us your whack job this week? Because I have a hero, and
right.
I think mine is pretty relevant to what we're talking about, actually.
So one of our listeners sent in an article that got me thinking about this whack job. And my whack job, I'm not going to call anybody out by name, but it is the set of people and administrators who have developed. Have you heard the no zero policy in K through 12?
No. Is this like participation trophies for K through 12?
Yeah. So we have an example. I'll put it in the show notes of a Florida teacher who was fired for basically not following this policy. She gave students a 0 for not turning in work. But a lot of school districts, you get 50% credit for not turning in any work. They call it a 0.
How do you get credit for not doing something?
You should check at your kid's school,
How do you
John.
prove a negative? Oh my God! Luckily my kids are pretty bright. I will go to bat for my kids. They're pretty bright. They get it from their mother. So I've never had to worry about this. But are you kidding me?
This is the thing.
Like the SATs, just showing up, you get 200 points.
Yeah, this is a thing in my school district. You guys should check into this. So it's a thing in the Madison school district, I believe. So basically, 50% for doing nothing. So you have people leaving high school thinking that, I'm going to get, I don't know, half pay for not doing any work at a job. Like it's absurd. And they're like, well, it makes it hard for them to catch up. Well, how you don't have to catch up? You do your work. And this notion that actions have consequences may be more valuable than whatever numerical outcome they get, in high school. It's ridiculous. And they all talk about how it's more fair. And the numbers work out. If mathematically, sure, it's hard to overcome a 0, but there's more at stake than just running the right numbers. So those are my whack jobs.
I like it. And those are lifelong Democratic voters.
They will be.
I shouldn't say that, but I figured you would, so I'll save you some.
Yeah.
My hometown in Westchester, Pennsylvania is having quite a moment. We have a Netflix television series being filmed here, Tires, Shane Gillis, who I've actually met in person. Very nice fellow. He's a big Notre Dame guy, by the way. He frequents restaurants in town here. There's QVC here, so there's quite a number of celebrities that sell their products and so forth. QVC's in financial trouble, but it is in Westchester. But, it's not uncommon that you run into celebrities here in Westchester. We have one of the 50 best restaurants in the country, according to the New York Times, just a couple blocks from my house. But my heroes of the week this week are the 12 and under East Side Little League team that made the Little League World Series. Now, unfortunately, they lost their first game on Friday night. They play again on Monday. They've got a tough road to try and make the finals. But I just think it's a reminder of the importance of community and of sports and how it can really bring people together. Just these kids, the McDonald's, the local tire store, all these people have signs all over. Everybody's talking about it. It's just a wonderful story of kids that are doing well, playing in Williamsport, and hopefully they do well on Monday. But even if they don't, it's sort of like the kids that made Harvard. Hey, you made Harvard. Who cares if you got an A? These kids made the Little League World Series, and they'll be able to take that with them for the rest of their life. And it's just a reminder, I think, of the value of community and particularly the value of sports. So good luck to the East Side Little League. They're my heroes of the week this week.
Good luck, kids.
Yeah. Well, Timmy, listen, you have a great week, and we'll figure this out. I'm interested. I do appreciate your thoughts. I think your solution is pretty interesting. Put them in the stadium and say, listen, half of you, let's just trim the fat.
Yes.
See how that works out.
Yeah.
But I think you and I actually are pretty much in agreement. The purpose of this show is that we're two people who see the world differently, but I think in a lot of ways we're in agreement on this, and perhaps it's because we both came from the university setting or have taught in the university setting, so we're familiar with what ails it, right?
Yeah, I think so.
So, yeah. Well, listen, have a great week, and good luck to the East Side Little League, and this is John Boland signing off saying, hey, misbehave, drive fast, take chances.
And this is Tim saying, if everybody likes what you're doing, you're probably not doing anything worthwhile. As an editorial note, even if you don't send us comments or emails, we'll give you half credit. So let's keep talking.
Touche, Timmy. Have a great week, buddy.
All right, see you.